As more and more countries join the BRICS nations here, it leads you to ask yourself, are the dollar's days numbered? Before we go into more of the information here on the screen share, I wanted to kind of preface this conversation with an analogy of some sort. Why does this beautiful device with a beautiful camera on it that has unlimited potential cost only about $1,000? Should be millions for based on what this iPhone can do. A lot of us are oblivious to the fact of this being just a modern marvel. We just go by day and don't really appreciate it that much. But the truth is, the reason this iPhone is so cheap for what it does, again, very much so overlooked, is because Samsung exists. If Apple decided it had no competition and it said, we're going to make the iPhone 10 grand each, 20 grand each for an iPhone, a lot of people would pay it, including myself, if it was the only option out there. For what the iPhone does, if there was no other option out there, I would probably pay 10 to 20 grand for it. I know that sounds crazy, but it does a lot for me. And I know a lot of people out there would feel the same. But the reason why Apple can't get away with that, which they could get away with if they had no competition, is because Samsung would come out and go, hey, we got a phone for $500. We got a phone for $1,000. I know Apple's great and all, but is it $20,000 great? And then Apple, puts their tail between their legs and goes, okay, it's $1,000. And they compete with each other. This is free market capitalism. And that's what happens. Products get better, prices go down with competition. Now ask yourself, when it comes to the currency that we use, has there ever been any competition? No. The entire world trusted the dollar, and the dollar became the reserve currency. Now, in today's day and age, should there be competition among reserve currencies? And what would happen if there was competition among reserve currencies? There's only one right now, but even Jerome Powell has said that there's room for another reserve currency. So when I see this news that just came out today, by the way, let me go back to this screen. We have the news that Iran and Saudi Arabia are among 6 nations set to join China and Russia in the BRICS economic bloc. Now I go down here. The United Arab Emirates, Argentina, Egypt, and Ethiopia were also set to enter BRICS from January 1st, 2024, joining current members Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa to make an 11-nation bloc. This is billions and billions of people, getting closer and closer to half the world in regards to population in control of BRICS. And they're trading now in different currencies than the dollar. So, like I said, why is the iPhone so cheap? Is because Samsung came around to make them act right. They had to compete, and they're still competing to this day. Lower price points, more things that you can do on these devices. Competition makes that happen. Now, what's going to happen if the dollar gets competition? Next interesting thing I wanted to bring up in this video is if this BRICS, all the people in BRICS don't really trust the dollar. What's interesting is when you see a public trust in the government from 1958 to 2022, this is a survey that they do. It's called, Pew Research. They do this survey that they've done back since the late 50s until now. Ironically, at one point, we actually almost had 80% of the population trust our government. Almost 80%. This is the U.S. Now, we have barely 20% that trust the government. And we hasn't done a 2023 poll, which, according to current leadership, in my opinion, and how they've been responding to things like Hawaii and all these different things going on and just exporting all of our money to different countries, I'd argue it's much less than 20%. But let's just say it is 24%. If not even a quarter of the U.S. population believes that the government has their best interests at heart, what makes you think these other countries do? Our own citizens in our own country, 75% or more don't trust them. And we're going to think that the BRICS nations are just going to sit around and continue to trust the dollar? I don't know. I don't know about that. I just wanted to share that poll with you all to make you think a little bit about it. And I always love looking at the comment sections in these videos. It's been a little while since I've made a video, but I plan to be making a lot more. I've been a little bit preoccupied with other things, but we are coming back. So these other nations, including us, all of the U.S. citizens, see that our national debt is nearly $33 trillion now. We see how they treat our people. We see how they treat our money. We see how they dilute it. Everyone knows this. So it's just a matter of time before something like this happens with the BRICS nations. And here's something interesting here. So here's the information on BRICS, which started out with Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. Ironically, all these countries love gold. All of them. India loves gold. China loves gold. Russia loves gold. And they all unanimously don't really like dollars and have been de-dollarizing their economies. So to me, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see what's going on here. I'm a little bit chess-minded. I like to think a few moves ahead. And it's just, you don't really need to be chess-minded to see what's happening here. The writing's really on the wall. But if you need a little bit more convincing, they have a thing called the New Development Bank. This is a picture of the New Development Bank headquarters in Shanghai, China, of all places. So they have been developing their own bank. They actually call it the New Development Bank. And this started, ironically, I believe, right after the 2009 crisis. I believe they started BRICS in general in 2010. So right after the first financial crisis, they went, I don't know if we could trust what's going on over there. And then it's gotten to this point. The most recent development with this bank is in 2022. In response to Russia-Ukraine war, the New Development Bank announced that it put new transactions with Russia on hold. Even though the New Development Bank quickly cut ties with Russia, Fitch Ratings still downgraded the New Development Bank from stable to negative as long-term. In May of 2022, the New Development Bank set up a regional office in India with the goal of financing and observing infrastructure projects in both India and Bangladesh. In 2023, Saudi Arabia expressed its intention to join the New Development Bank. So the countries that are big oil tycoons, the countries that love gold, India is absolutely crushing it in regards to tech. And then you got China, which is a powerhouse of creating products and different things along those lines. I mean, you have these countries getting together and creating their own bank with the headquarters in Shanghai, with all the stuff that's going on, and they're adding more and more countries to BRICS. Meanwhile, again, the public trust in the U.S. of the government is at all-time lows. So, long story short, I think what people need to start understanding, at least this is my personal opinion on it, is we have experienced financial crisis before. We've experienced the stock market crisis in 2009, but we've never experienced a currency competition crisis. We've never experienced one of these countries going, you know what, we're backing our money to gold. Why was money gold in the back? In the past, the reason why all the countries trusted the US dollar is because it was backed to gold. Why is this? Because money is an exchange for time. You give up your time and labor every single day, whatever you do for work, for money. The money itself should take time and labor to make. That's a fair exchange, right? The gold took time to pull it out of the ground, and it took time to make it, refine it, and turn it into this beautiful bar here, right? So a lot of people would trade $2,000 of their time, $2,000 worth their time for 1 ounce of gold. So that's how it worked. Now, what time, what energy did it take to print all of this money? To put us $33 trillion in debt? What time and value was exchanged there? No, they do it out of thin air. They do it out of thin air because there's no one to check them. Just like Samsung turns around and checks Apple if they raise their prices too high, or if they don't provide enough value with the iPhone. Nobody's turned around and checked the US dollar. And I think that that's the writing on the wall here. So with this new news that just came out and why I wanted to make this video, I think what they are doing is trying to get prepared to have their own currency. And they have their own currencies, but their own reserve currency outside of the dollar. And Jerome Powell's already said this in the past, that he believes that there's room for another reserve currency out there. That's what I think the writing on the wall is here. And what am I doing about it personally? Obviously, I hold assets that are could be denominated in any currency. 100 ounces of silver is 100 ounces of silver. A 1 ounce gold bar is a 1 ounce gold bar. One Bitcoin is one Bitcoin. When you start understanding what an asset is and how it can be denominated in different currencies, that's where I think is a good place to be. Because if the price of the dollar tanks, if there's some competing reserve, and how hard of competition is it really? How hard of competition is it really? I know I'm ranting here a little bit, but I want to get this off of my mind and share it with some people. And please post some comments on what you think of this matter, because the narrative is, oh, the dollar is king and it'll always be king. There's no possible competition for that. But then I ask myself, what exactly is proprietary about the dollar? What exactly is proprietary? You know? What, we're the strongest military in the world. Okay, other superpowers possess weapons that can do utter devastation. So when you have when you have weaponry that is capable of that kind of destruction on both sides of the equation, then what exactly does it mean to say you have the strongest military? At some point we could just destroy each other. So having the strongest military to back the currency doesn't really make much sense. Now, when it comes down to assets and different things like that, it's like, I don't see the proprietary value in the dollar, especially with the way our government acts, especially because less than 25% of the country even believes in what they're doing or thinks that they're doing the right things in their interests. And I'd argue that it's much less than that with all the things that have gone on recently. So ask yourself, what is really proprietary about these dollars in the bank account that I have? Is how long can this kind of charade keep going forward? And what would it take for the price of the dollar, the value of the dollar to tank? Well, if another currency came out and it was backed by nearly half the world's population in BRICS right now, all of the economic output that these countries have, and then they decide to back it to something like gold, that would be a very competitive force, you might say. And really, it's what competition is? My thin air better than your thin air? It all doesn't make much sense to me to say that our currency is the most proprietary and everybody has to use it and nobody's going to question it and nobody's going to put us in check. Nobody's going to be the Samsung to the Apple to the iPhone. I just think that it's a matter of time. What do you think of this video? What do you think of this topic? I'm curious. Obviously I have my bias, but I just wanted to vent a little bit and see what your guys' opinion is of this, because this is all recent developments here. This news literally, we'll end the video here, but this news was literally today, August 24th, this news dropped. So more and more people joining BRICS, more and more people not trusting the dollar. Again, what do you think? See you at the next video. Signing out.